All right. We are back at the podcast studio. We are in Belmar today, and we have a very special guest. We have Steve from Web Theory PPC on. Steve, how are you today?
I'm good, Tom. How you doing?
Good. We met through a mutual acquaintance, Alan,
Yes.
who's the director of marketing at Wingman, and he told me you were the man when we were talking about something with PPC. So then quickly we got connected, and you're on the podcast.
That's it. I mean, that's how it works, right?
That's fair. And then you've already have somebody calling me tomorrow who wants to talk to me about the podcast. And as you got here today, you said, "Oh, Omar should be on the podcast."
Yeah. So
So you're one of those guys from Staten Island who's got a guy who knows everything.
That's it. It's all about networking.
It's all about networking. So, kind of, how'd you get into this game?
The marketing game.
Marketing game, the self-employment game, the PPC game, and PPC is its own animal.
It is for sure. So yeah, man, I kind of fell into it gradually, if that makes sense. So graduated college, wanted to go to law school, law
school in digital marketing.
I know, right? Ironically enough, lawyers are some of the best PPC clients. Yeah. So I wanted to go to law school. It didn't happen for a bunch of reasons, and I had a friend who had a friend who was a recruiter at AOL, and at the time,
AOL. That just sounds funny.
I know. I'm dating myself a little bit here, right? But yeah, so he was able to get me a job with, at that point, Patch.com, which is, I think now they're independent, but then they were owned by AOL, part of like their local.
That was their local. They were going to come in and be the local and take over everything local. But I don't think people realize, honestly. I mean, you could tell us from the inside, but when I remember that, and I remember I had a friend that I went to college with, shout out to Jamie Tomio, that she worked at AOL doing reporting. And I just thought, like, being that local presence, it's hard to be the local presence everywhere.
Yes, and that's exactly the thing that they ran into. And, it was miserable, to be honest with you. We were making 100 cold calls a day from an office in Manhattan to these little towns all over.
So you were calling everywhere. You weren't just calling the city.
You were assigned territories.
Okay.
So, yeah, my territories were Connecticut. I had 4. So you were assigned a patch. So if the town was big enough, it had its own patch, or there would be 2, 2 towns.
Brick has one. Brick has one, and there were other ones along the way.
Exactly. So, you would be given, like a sales manager would be given a collection, and then each, so I'm making 100 cold calls a day from Manhattan to pizzeria owners and body shop owners in Darien, Connecticut. And it's, first of all, you lose that personal touch big time. And
you don't know the area. It's like
exactly.
hard.
Exactly. And there's a lot of trust issues, I think, when you're doing hyper local stuff like that over the phone. And the thing is, I think local stuff like that through cold outreach can work, but you need scale and volume. And the reason why it was hard as a salesperson is there's only so much volume I can get in 4 towns of 90,000, right? Yeah. And, back then, also, don't forget, this is 2010. It wasn't a given that a lot of mom and pops had websites. There was no Wix, there was no Squarespace, so, and if they did have a website, it was they either paid some guy in China like, $25 and there were like Google ads on their site making that guy money, or, it was like it was
the Wild Wild West.
It was, yeah. Or like, their nephew was really good at doing his MySpace page, so, they thought he could do a website.
Yeah, sure.
But the other problem I ran into there was I was having a hard time hitting my commissions because of all the business didn't have websites. We couldn't sell them ads because we had nowhere to drive the traffic to. Them. So I knew WordPress a little bit through a friend of mine who had a blog in college that I wrote for, and he was like, well, why don't you just do websites? I'm using WordPress. I'm like, it's a good idea. So I got into doing websites, not to make money with it, but just to make my commissions.
That's hysterical that you start doing websites on the side to make your commissions that job. I wish we knew each other then. I would have been knocking out websites every day.
It would have been insane. I didn't even think this was like a thing, and and it was very rough at first because I had no programming experience. I didn't know what HTML was like, except from MySpace back in the day.
Sure.
But so I would basically just buy a template, and if they wanted customizations outside what that template was capable of, I'd be like, sorry, can't do it.
Half the web developers in 2024
are using templates. I know, right? So
and if it's outside of that, they don't know what to do with it.
No, exactly. And luckily back then people were just happy to have a website. They weren't as as granular
critical
about So And then, back then there was also the housing, slump and all that. So they extended unemployment for, I think back then you were able to extend 3 times so you can get 2 years. And I just wanted out. I was working in the city, taking a bus in the morning.
That's hard.
Once the fall hit, I didn't see sunlight except for 10 minutes. I was on the bus before the sun rose. I was out of the office after the sunset.
That has to be miserable.
It was. And to be honest with you, I wasn't making that much money. It was, the base salary was like $28,000 a year. And if you hit all your commissions, there was an extra, I think, $4,000 a quarter. So you're looking at extra 60. So it was like, 40 something thousand with unemployment, after what I was losing to commute, after losing the New York City municipal tax, because you're losing extra tax, I was actually about even on unemployment. So I had
and that's assuming you hit all 4 of those quarters.
Exactly, which I didn't all those years. That's why I started doing the websites. And so I actually asked my manager, I was pretty friendly with, I was like, hey, they were contracting. They were getting rid of a lot of the sites. They realized they scaled too quickly. I was like, hey, I don't know if my territories are going or not, but, just put me on the chopping block. And he's like, well, what do you mean? And I broke the math down for him. Not that I was doing websites on the side, but, I broke the math down for him. I'm like, listen, I would make just about the same on unemployment after saving, because I think back then I was paying like $500-600 a month to commute.
That's before you eat a sandwich in the city, which is a lot more expensive than eating one in Belmont, New Jersey.
Oh, 100%, So I'm like, listen, if I could lose that expense, so he took mercy on me, did that, and
you were living in Jersey at that point?
Manalapan.
So you were already out of Staten Island.
Oh yeah. We moved out of Staten Island when I was a kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you just retain the accent.
Well, I also my family had a catering business there. We got rid of it in 2005. So I was heavily involved.
Till then. All right,
yeah,
cool.
And I moved back there for a year after high school because I was one of those like, I hate Jersey, so I'm going back. A lot of people do that from where I'm from, but now I love it.
And then you realize how much better New Jersey is.
Now I don't want to leave Jersey.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah, so going from Manalapan, it was, you had the bus to Manhattan, you had the parking at the bus stop, then you had the Metro card. It was,
It just sounds awful.
It was miserable. So
now you leave there and you're a Jersey guy. You're like, I'm not going back to the city. I'm not doing this.
Nope.
You learned how to sell though. I mean, dialing 100 dials a day. I mean, it's miserable, but you learn how to sell.
Yeah, you learn how to sell.
You learn how to talk to people. You learn how to overcome objection.
Big time. And the biggest thing is you learn how to not take objection personally.
You got to be like Teflon. Let it roll right
exactly.
off you.
And I'll be honest, I'm very critical of myself in a good way. That was one of my weaknesses early on. I would take it very personal.
You know what? I always say it's a numbers game, and I say to new people that come on board, like, if they don't want to be successful, that's up to them.
Right.
Like, I kind of spin that rejection into, you're going to hit, if you call 10 people or 20 people, you're going to hit a certain number of people that are interested in talking to you.
100%.
So, it's just, and again, not everybody's, it's timing too. Like, there's a lot of times, no matter how good of a salesman you are, no matter how, it's just the timing is just off sometimes. Like, where, they don't need something. They don't need what you have. Yep. You could have the best whatever in the world, but if they don't know what you have,
exactly,
they're never going to be able to use it.
It's very. I think the point you just brought up is important, and we could kind of get back to that a little after if you want. But I think that's one of the most important things about digital marketing today in general, and is it's not just about being in front of the right people. It's about being in front of the right people at the right time.
Totally.
And that's one of the things I push about paid search, right? And it depends on what you're doing too. So, for instance, I used to do advertising for a big chain of fitness places in New Jersey, which we were talking about before. But they were one of these boot camp challenges, right? And the whole thing is, okay, well, who's the right person? Well, everybody's the right person at some point in their life to lose weight. Right, and
myself included.
Right, I mean, listen, I've been on a journey, but I still have a bit to go. But the idea is, well, okay, so we know they're pretty much all the right people, but it's like, are they motivated right now? Do they have the time right now? Do they have the money right now? So the challenge then becomes, it's like, okay, well, we've got their info. They didn't buy, let's say, right? And, then we develop ad plans around remarketing, lead nurturing via email, whatever it is. Now we stay in front of them until it's the right time. right? And that's the big thing. And that's one of the things I love about digital marketing, to be honest, because back when I was, jockeying phone calls and slinging websites on the side, like we didn't have these advanced techniques. We didn't even have an understanding of that really. Yeah. So it's, it's a good time for that stuff. And I think it's really good,
That is great, and I love the fact that like you've seen the advancement, because jockeying websites it sounds funny, and when you think about it, and even from an agency standpoint as well as from your client, like it's not just wham bam thank you ma'am all the time. It's not just let's I have people call me up, let's just get a Facebook ad this week so we can just get extra sales. Like I tell people very infrequently does that really work. There are times you can get a quick hit. There are times that things just work out, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that for my clients. I'm grateful for that for myself. Right. But that's not real marketing. And I think smaller businesses in general have to think. And we just did a video not too long ago for our social that talks about like you have to do that ongoing. It's like unfortunately it's like a diet. You got to do it every day. 100%. It's like going to the gym. You don't go to the gym one day, pump out 300 pounds on the bench press, and you look great. Like you could do that one day, and you could maybe get a wham bam thank you ma'am and go to a bar and get lucky. But it's not the reality. The reality is that you're going to do that. You're going to work out every single day, or every 4 times a week, or whatever your plan is. It's the same thing with advertising and digital advertising, print advertising. Again, when people ask me to do an EDDM mailer, and they're like, let's mail the whole neighborhood. And I said, how many times are we going to do this? And they said, well, one, it's expensive. I said, you're better off doing a smaller target 3 times to the same neighborhood, maybe with a different message, but maybe also with the same message, than to just do a blanket one time. Because if no one's ever heard of you, then now they get a piece of mail for the first time. It takes 8 touch points in marketing to make a sale.
Easily. And, I usually tell people, because people do that too. I have a good analogy I paint for people, and I actually want to touch upon the gradual thing you mentioned in a second. But, people, I'll usually tell people, I'm like, look, you could either invest a significant amount of money or burn a small amount of money. Which do you want to do, right? And especially in the world of ads, a lot of people come to me and they approach it from what's the least I have to spend, or what's the least I can get away with spending, right? And the analogy I paint for people, especially from an ads perspective, is this. I was like, you got to reframe the thinking, because think of what we do with ads, especially with search ads, right? Or Facebook ads to a lesser extent this applies, but it does in a larger sense. If you could imagine like a big box store that sells leads, right? Like a big Target, but all they sell is leads, right? And on one shelf it's plumbing leads, another shelf it's lawyer leads, and whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, you're walking through that store, and you're an HVAC guy, and you come across the HVAC leads aisle, and you see, HVAC leads on sale for $150 a piece, and they're quality leads, right? They're qualified. And for every lead you pay that $150 for, you're going to make back $1,200 in revenue. Your question then wouldn't become, what's the minimum I have to buy? The question is, how many can you get me right now?
And then how many you could service as the HVAC customer,
right?
Client,
but you automatically
change the mindset.
Exactly, you wouldn't be thinking from a scarcity mindset. You start to think from an abundance mindset, right?
That's a great point.
And that's usually what I tell people. And to your point about you can't do a wham bam one-off campaign. It's like the name of the game is optimization, whether it's SEO, conversion rate optimization on a website, ads optimization, and you can't optimize without time. And the thing I tell clients too is don't be afraid of pockets of bad performance, because that's just as valuable to us from an information standpoint as the good performance, because knowing what not to do and knowing who to exclude is just as important as knowing who to target. Sometimes more, because in order for us to find new business, we need to target broadly. But we know, okay, we want to target broadly except these people. Mm-hmm. And that has just as much value. And that's how you get to that place kind of that you were talking about, where you can't think of things in one-off. Now, don't get me wrong, like for this fitness client, right, we would do our evergreen marketing. But then if they had a challenge, let's say coming up May 10th, you're going to market around that, right?
Sure.
But there's synergy with what your regular messaging is, right?
Yeah, you're not just going in for the May 10th and trying to hit it on May 8th.
No.
You're going in with a consistent campaign and then doubling down for the May 10th.
And what we would do in those instances, not to give too much strategy away, but no, I'm kidding. But, the idea is you don't start off like a 4-week ad push telling people why your brand is better, why they need to come on board with your brand. That's your evergreen marketing. And the idea is you're also establishing an audience. So now when it comes to doing that promotional marketing for that event, we're only targeting people that have interacted with our ads or our page in the past. So now they're at least familiar, if not warm. But our messaging for the evergreen stuff has been around, hey, whenever you want to lose weight and get in shape, we're the guys, and here's why. So now when those people are seeing the May 10th deadline, we're not explaining to them why we're the place to come. They've already been convinced of that, and we're able to tell that by, the video views, how well they've engaged with the website and things like that. So, you can't do too much in too short a time. So we're not using that short sprint to convince them of why this is the place. They've already been convinced of that. Now we're convincing them of this is the time. Whereas with the evergreen ads, we're not convincing them now is the time, because any time could be the time for them. Like if, let's say they have their daughters getting married, well, you don't know when that's going to happen. So that's why you need to stay evergreen.
Yeah.
And
makes sense.
That's how you make everything work in kind of a synergistic way.
So now as a PPC only guy, like you're not the guy who's building websites anymore, although you have that, that knack, and you're not a full service agency, like, where you're doing print, where you're doing web, you're not doing.
I've done a little bit of all of it at different points.
You've dipped your toe into it, but you really now are saying, I want to be just great at PPC marketing.
Yeah. So I got there through, it's what I'm best at, I think. And I think I have a very robust understanding of how the entire ecosystem works, right? It's what I enjoy the most. But I think it's also something that, my customer philosophy is I used to let customers kind of push me around. And what I mean by that is they would tell me what they wanted me to do, right? And then, I would go do it. And as I matured, got older, got more experience, I realized that you're doing your client a disservice by doing that too. And, I would just kind of tell them like, hey, don't tell me what you need me to do. I'm going to tell you what needs to be done. You tell me what your goals are, and we'll work toward that. And we've, to get a lot more collaborative. And I think there are a lot of agencies that honestly do PPC and Google ads especially, and they don't really understand the entire ecosystem, because it's unique in that, with SEO, there's no one you're fighting, right? Google wants you to do well with SEO, right? And Google wants you to do well with PPC too, in theory, but they want you to spend more money to do it. So that's where people who are running their own, they fall down that rabbit hole real quick. They get the calls from the guys overseas, from the outsourced Google support team, and they tell you to make adjustments to your campaigns and stuff like that. I'm not even going to say 9 times out of 10. 99 times out of 100, all that's going to happen is you're going to spend more money, and they're going to push you on what we call vanity metrics. They're going to be like, oh, see, you got so many more impressions. But if I paid 3 times the amount and got the same amount of leads, impressions don't make my business money, right? Leads make your business money. Leads come from clicks, so you need to get clicks, right? But you measure everything in terms of how are we doing conversion-based, right? Now, sometimes there are instances where I'll tell clients, look, leads aren't the move here. Like, let's say you just open a new karate school in an area and you just want to get the word out. Exactly. So now I'd say, all right, I'm going to get my video guy in there. We're going to film a couple of awareness videos. We're going to boost it on Facebook. We're going to boost it on YouTube Shorts and get you there, right? Much lower budget. But guess what? Now we're going to benchmark the people who watch that video for 10 seconds or more, and then we're going to target them with lead gen ads. So while we're not focusing on leads for this campaign, it does all tie in at some point. But the thing is, clients have to understand at that point patience. Your ROI isn't going to be as immediate, right? And
patience and clients, that's funny.
That's
made a little joke this morning.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Patience, yeah.
That's what it is.
That's great. So now, do you work with other providers, or like, are you a standalone, or do people bring you in on the team? Like, so, like when you think about like your average client and your, or like how you acquire customers. There's some people that are just calling you to hire a PPC agency.
Right.
There's other people that are looking for an agency, an overall agency, more someone like a wingman more than you directly. Now, do you work with clients like a wingman, and as their PPC guy, or are you mostly just brought in on your own? How does that kind of just
work?
So
I used to do, kind of like, moonlighting for different agencies. And, I would have the email address of the agency and we would make like I was part of it. But, I tend to avoid that now because I find that creates a lot of over complexity in the relationship. The way I kind of try and position that now is, like an agency partnership. So essentially, and I have another agency in, I get further up the shore that we have a tight partnership with, where they'll, as their clients come to them, they'll ask for PPC, and the position is like, hey, we're not PPC experts. It's a completely different ball game. As much as clients don't think it is, I used to work for an IT company doing sales, and a lot of clients used to come to them to do their website, and everyone would be like, "Why are you?" I do network, like literally, like
I get that all the time. I think to me, IT and web are
completely different.
Like they're not even the same ballpark. And there are people that said, "Oh, this is Tom, my IT guy," and I say, I'll stop them and say, "Please don't call me your IT guy. I have nothing to do with your network. I don't even know about your network." But in their mind, to me, it's like if you're talking about a contractor, the guy who tapes and spackles usually doesn't paint your house.
Right.
The guy who paints your house usually doesn't,
You're not going to say I have a leaky gas line. Let me ask the guy painting to look at it.
But in their world, a contractor is a contractor is a contractor. In our world, an IT or a web guy is the same thing. And it to us, it's like, oh, please don't do it.
No.
And
you know how many times I'll have clients, even to this day, like, I still have certain clients that I manage their website for because I did the website like 8 years ago and it's still there. But, they'll hit me up and they'll be like, oh, we hired someone new. We needed them added to our email. And I was like, that is an IT function, completely. Like, please don't hit me up for that. And you don't want me doing that.
The hard part is like you want to help the customer because it's easy. But on the other side is like, and I have legacy people and I have some new people where I come in and we try to be the one-stop shop.
Right.
There's times where this is not our wheelhouse.
Exactly. But I got a guy. So if you need IT help, you can still call me. I got a guy.
Perfect.
I'll hook you up.
That's good. So it seems like you have a guy for everything, though.
I mean, yeah, that's just kind of how I grew up.
Island way.
Yeah, restaurant business. Like I'm Italian and Greek, so those two communities are very well networked.
Yeah.
Actually, I shouldn't say well networked. They're tightly networked,
Sure. Gotta break into them.
Exactly, a lot of toxicity, but a lot of good stuff too. You gotta learn how to wade through it. But like growing up though, my family was in the catering business, and this was before days of the internet.
Yeah.
And the only way they really got business was my dad was involved heavily with the Chamber of Commerce, with the Kiwanis Club, Make-A-Wish Foundation, all these different things, and it was like he was very into charity work, but it was a double purpose thing because that's how you got business, and so I was always around people that were engaged, energetic like that, and I enjoy people. I enjoy talking to people, and the other reason why I think I love like kind of what I do is I have an affinity for small business. I grew up, it put a roof over my head growing up, but also there's just something about people trying to do their own thing, and there's someone who's trying to get ahead, I think, is in a very, very strong position to be taken advantage of easily. And there's a lot of people in our industry, especially, I'm sure you deal with it just as much as I do. Clients will come to me. They want to believe that this could work for them, but it's like, you know what? I spent $3,000 a month on a 5-year contract I was locked into, and these guys did nothing. And, there's so much of that in our industry, and it's like, it's easy because a lot of people, to them, the web is a black box. They don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
They're eager to make their business grow, right? And that's what happens. And there's so many people that, and it's just so, like, we get such a bad rap in this industry. And, I usually tell people, look, my thing is I don't bring on a lot of clients at once, right? And that's probably the biggest business struggle if I'm going to be completely open and vulnerable. And it's not a struggle. It's kind of like by design but my churn is extremely low. And those two happen simultaneously because I pay a lot of attention to my clients. Like, I'm not the cheapest PPC guy around. I'm not the most expensive either. But, I pay attention. And, I don't just mean to the dashboard. Like, I'll hit you up and it's like, hey, I noticed that, you're not responding to these leads. Are you getting, this is something I'm dealing with a client now, right? Are you getting the emails to your inbox? No, blah, blah, blah. And, well, I did a screen share with him and he logs in on on Outlook on his computer, and they're all there. He's like, oh, I'm always on my cell phone. They're not showing up, this and that, right? Turns out he had a filter because years ago he was getting like spammy emails somewhere, and he literally filtered out one of the words that we had in the subject line, right?
Oh.
Now, most PPC agents aren't going to do that. They're like, well, I'm sending them to you. Here's the spreadsheet. Now, I could have done that, but the reason I didn't want to is like, hey, if I send you a spreadsheet of leads that are 6 weeks old, we both know those leads are gone. They might as well not even be there. It's after 6 weeks, so.
And you didn't respond, like
exactly, So things like that.
That's great that you have low churn. Low churn is, a sign that you're doing the right thing for your customer.
Right.
I think that's great. And I think that there's probably some sort of balance where you want to bring them on a little bit faster and keep your pipeline fuller, and then keep that low churn. And I think that's how you start to expand. You can't you can't be the guy who does everything,
Exactly. And I tried that
a long time ago.
And I tried that for a while, because here's the thing: I can do websites, I can do SEO, I have this skill set, I know how to do it. But when I was, for a long time, I was freelancing, and I was doing that stuff. It was great money, right, to be made on the side, but number one, when you're being pulled in so many different directions at once, it's a different mindset, right? Especially when you're doing SEO and PPC, because with SEO, it's just about getting more volume, right? With PPC, being that you're paying for each individual click, more volume isn't always good. And that's the other thing I tell clients is like, you have to have patience with this because we need to back into success. That's kind of how I tell people. It's like, we're going to start with the very center of bullseye, right? And those are going to be the most on-target leads, high conversion rates, also a high cost per click, but also going to be very low volume because those are the people, let's say if it's an HVAC company, right, in East Brunswick, New Jersey, they're the ones who are typing in, how do I hire an HVAC company in East Brunswick, New Jersey? There's not a lot of people searching that, but if they're searching that, they're looking to hire, right? Yeah. So that's where we start. So we may not exhaust your budget. And then we go out a little further, right? HVAC company reviews in Middlesex County, right? Well, they're maybe not ready to buy now, but maybe they got a home renovation coming up. It's not an emergency type situation. Whatever it is, they're relevant, right? And then we back into that. But the idea is, I always tell clients, we want to make sure all of our arrows are exhausted in the center of bullseye. Then when there's no room in the center, then we could take the next arrows and hit the outer ring, and then the outer ring.
That's a really good way to kind of position it. And now, an HVAC, who would have thought 7-8 years ago that all this private equity money would be flowing into HVAC.
My God.
And they'll spend anything on these leads.
It's crazy. And it's almost problematic for the small business guy, though. Yeah. I see a lot of I have a really good friend who has an HVAC and plumbing business in East Brunswick, and he's doing good, don't get me wrong, but our ad costs just keep going up and up and up, and it's like, I tell them, like, we're competing with these people.
Those guys have to do it. They have to do it a different way. Like they can't compete on pay-per-click, because pay-per-click, they could end up losing money on some of these.
Oh, 100%.
Like by the time they look at their profit after the job, it looks like great. It's a $12,000 replacement system, and everybody's like, whoa, you made $12,000. Right. Everybody that says that has no idea how the business runs.
So I'm gonna give HVAC and plumbing people a quick PPC tip here. Make sure your PPC agency is not targeting things like plumber near me, plumbing company, heating company, HVAC company, because you're gonna get a lot of people that are calling, hey, my shower, my shower's leaky, right? Yep. And you're gonna make $175, $225 going out there, and you paid that much to acquire the lead. What we'll do is we'll use our clients. We're like, hey, we're going to focus on services, more service-specific keywords, but only your profitable services. Like, so, if they got a hydrojet, right, we're going to focus on that because they're going to charge $1,200, $1,300 to go out there. It's going to take them one guy, so they're not going to be spending a lot of money, things like that, right? Or water heater repair and so things like that. And so make sure your PPC company is doing that because otherwise you're spending a lot of money on low ROI leads.
Great tip. HVAC tip of the day.
That's
plumbing tip of the day.
It's all about giving free value.
I love it. So this was a great conversation. Yeah. As we wrap up, how do people find you in the PPC space?
Check me out at webtheoryppc.com. Actually in the process of renovating the site right now. So
if you need help, let me know.
I definitely will. I appreciate that. I may actually. webtheoryppc.com. All the socials are kind of the same. It's all Web Theory PPC. And that's it.
Awesome. This was a great conversation. I'm glad to have somebody else from the industry that's a professional coming on and talking because, again, I think you're right. I think not the the online industry doesn't always get a great, look to it.
And there's a lot of us out there that do want to help you. We do want to do good for you, but I do have to say, and this may sound, kind of self-serving, but if you're going to shop only on price, you're not going to get the people that aren't going to screw you over. The reason why those guys hit so rock bottom on price is because they know they're not putting work into your account. It takes time and resources to work on an account, and if they're rock bottoming you, it means they know they're not investing back into it. So,
in addition, those companies usually they know that what their burn rate's going to be and what their churn's going to be,
and they stay ahead of it.
They just stay ahead of it by bringing on onboarding more than they lose.
Exactly. If they're overly eager to onboard, it means, to your point, they're trying to stay ahead of a high churn, which is one of the reasons why I look at my churn rate as a big metric. The accountant would probably like the onboarding rates better, right? But
but you're building the idea is you're building a business that's here for the long term, not
right.
And a lot of guys come and go in this business, and a lot of guys, they're here for a few months. I always make the joke, you could buy a laptop and you're in our business.
100%.
But realistically, they don't realize, and again, their friend or their father-in-law or their brother-in-law needs a website for his business, and they're like, this is so easy. I made a couple of grand, and then they don't realize how to consistently get clients and how to consistently service clients. And then when you bring on more clients, and then you have to, I need a web edit. I need this, and they don't have the time, and now all of a sudden they're like their back's against the wall, and they feel like they can't do it, but they try to hire someone, but they don't have enough lead flow the next month, so then they're in the same predicament.
No, and the biggest thing I see with that, believe it or not, is stupid stuff like, okay, your nephew did the website, doesn't look horrible, but there's no form.
No.
Right?
Well, the form doesn't go to the email, doesn't store in the database. Again, all those kind of things are those things that web companies know how to do.
Exactly, and we make sure it's there. But the big thing I see is when I get access to their analytics account, either they're like, what's that? It's like, so you have this website that was built. Analytics is free. That's another tip. If you have a website, you don't have Google Analytics on it, go to analytics.google.com and install it. And then if they do have it installed, they're not tracking conversions. And I'm like, well, the whole point of the website is to get the form fill. So if you're not benchmarking the stuff and tracking it, how are you making it better? How do you know where your gaps are? So, that's, there's a lot. It's worth the investment. If you have a business, I think that's the point, right? If you have a business, it's worth the investment in online. It's like back in the day, you wouldn't let your storefront look like garbage because no one would want to come in. That's the storefront today. And you got to
update it. And you got to keep
absolutely
keep it moving. Everybody, like you said earlier, people are like, well, it's the least I can pay. Also, how often do I have to update it? Update as often or as little as you want. But I'm going to tell you, the more that you're active, the better the SEO, the better. If you're using pay-per-click, the better that's going to perform for you.
Well, that's why I'm redoing my website now, actually. Not that, the fundamentals aren't there, but it looks dated. It looks like a site that was popular in 2022 because that's when I designed it, And we're, we move at the speed of light,
At least you have the foresight to understand that.
Right. And that's hopefully what I could bring to my clients.
All right. Well, let's last time because we kept going. Just let them know your web address one more time.
WebTheoryPPC.com.
All right. Thank you for coming on today. This was a great chat. It was awesome to discuss PPC marketing and just business in general in the online space. Thank you.
Thanks.